and also to share about his work and a very interesting door that God has opened for him with the Racetrack Chaplaincy of America. And so Brother Burch is coming at this time to share with us.
Well, I'm a little bit concerned that I won't be able to say what I need to say in the time allotted. Will there be any bells, any flags, any whistles, anything going off when I go past it? Thank you, Pastor Goins, for this opportunity to share with you about the church, a little bit about the little Spanish church just down the hall, and also about the ministry out at the racetrack. Many of you know that the Spanish church congregation was started by Tony Gonzalez in the late 80s. But then in the mid-90s, it became a joint effort between what was then known as FEA, now HIM, Hope International Missions. It was in 2014 that we came into the picture. We had been working with HIM in Mexico for a number of years. We came home to care for my wife's parents, so we were here in the area. And while I was very comfortable working with Mexicans, as I'd been in Mexico for over 30 years, this was something quite new to my wife and I. We were now working with people from as many as 12 different countries. While they all spoke Spanish, at least most of them did, their cultures were very different, and sometimes even the language was a bit different. I had to be careful that if I was going to be using a word, that it needed to be understood by any and all of those language groups that would be in that particular service. And when we came, we used the old church up on the hill, as you know, for a number of years. But I began to see that many of the people had practically no affiliation to this church and no connection at all. And I didn't want that to continue. I feel like there needed to be a connection. I was concerned that if something would happen to us, that if there would not be another Spanish-speaking replacement, that people would not consider this their church. They would just find someplace else, any place. And I wanted them to have a connection here. So for that reason and for others, 6.5 years ago, we started holding services down here in the chapel, and that has helped to connect our people to this church. I do believe there is far greater connection here now than then. And I want to thank all of you who have been friendly and have made people feel welcome and a warm atmosphere and environment for all those that come down. I appreciate that. And there's a whole lot more that I probably ought to say, but there's not a lot of time. So let me transition to the ministry that I entered into 2.5 years ago out at the racetrack in Grantville. When I tell people what I do, it's not uncommon for people's eyes to glaze over and for them to make statements like, "What? A chaplain where? I didn't know that was a thing." It's very common. So right up front, let me address the question that everyone is asking. Why does a racetrack need, want, or have a chaplain? Well, to answer that question, let me tell you a little bit about the beginnings, about how the Racetrack Chaplaincy of America got started. It goes back 54 years when an exercise rider was converted in Gulfstream Racetrack in Florida. They called him Salty Roberts. Salty lost his job because of alcoholism. His life was spiraling out of control. And during that time, someone handed him a gospel tract. But he was not ready to change. So he took it home and he threw it up on a dresser and forgot about it for the time being. A few days later, his life hit rock bottom. He grabbed a loaded shotgun, closed his lips around the cold barrel, and all the while he was sobbing and shaking, not really wanting to end his life. At that moment, something told him to put the gun down, and that voice seemed to tell him, "Come and learn about me." At that moment, his eyes fell on that tract laying up on his dresser. So he began to pray. He said, "Lord," he said, I need help. man. He said, I'm in the worst shape of my entire life. And that's when he saw that tract, and he went and picked it up, and he read through the tract, and then he read through it again. And then he remembered that he had a Bible somewheres, and he went looking for that Bible. He found it, dusted it off, and began reading that Bible. And he read that Bible all night long. The sun came up, and he was still reading that Bible. And the next morning, he realized that as he tried to figure out what had just happened to him, he realized that now he actually was excited about living. So he needed a job, so the only thing he knew to do was to work with horses. And so he was able to land a job exercising horses in the morning, and then in the afternoon, he began to talk to his fellow horsemen about Jesus. After some time of this, Salty called Reverend Al Dawson, who was in charge of missions for the denomination, his denomination in that state of Florida, and asked him directly why he had not done anything to help his buddies on the backside of the racetrack. That question jarred Dawson because he didn't even know that there was a need. He didn't know that the need existed. Well, it wasn't long until Dawson was walking the shed row with Salty every day, talking to people about the Lord, and the chaplaincy was born. Salty and Dawson, their goal was to put a chaplain in every racetrack in America. Well, that goal has not been met as of yet, but the Racetrack Chaplaincy of America now has chaplains in 50 states across the country, 50 different tracks. And a side note to that, 3 of them are from the Holiness Movement. You see, it's people like Salty Roberts who are the reason why racetracks need chaplains everywhere. So Salty Roberts knew that he was not the only one, and that's why the chaplaincy was founded. Well, another question that I get asked is, what does a chaplain do? What does a racetrack chaplain do? Well, when you came in tonight, you should have been given a brochure. If you didn't get one, there should be some left over. Pick one up on the way out. Inside is a list of the many things that we do there at the racetrack. But let me mention just some of those that are in that list. The first one in that list is probably one of the most important. We call it a daily devotional, although actually it is a little gospel message. I do them Monday through Friday. On Monday, I do it in Spanish. On Tuesday through Friday, I do it in English. It's a 2-minute audio message that comes to them through a phone call during the morning break using Dial My Calls. It's similar to the system that is used here, the one call. There's around 150 recipients of that little message every morning. And do you know how I know that it's actually getting to the people? They're hearing that message. I hear from them. They'll make comments. They'll ask me questions about what they heard. So I know that the gospel message is going out to at least 150 people Monday through Friday there at the racetrack. Then one week, once a week, I go to the race, and I will sit down with some of the jockeys and the valets and give them a little message and then have prayer with them. And then I'll do the same for the gate crew. It's one of the most dangerous jobs there is, probably. There's a lot of danger, and so it's a good opportunity to me to speak to them at that moment. Then let me mention just a few more of these things. On Monday nights, one of our 10 to 11 volunteering churches brings a meal in and serves 40 to 50 people. Then after that, we have a little church service in English. The following day, we have a Bible study in Spanish at noon. And speaking of Spanish, an estimated 60 to 70% of the workers speak Spanish. They come from places such as Peru, Chile, Argentina, Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, Panama, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Cuba. And then there's from other countries, other languages, those I don't speak. But at least in Spanish, those are the people that I'm speaking with. Every day as I walk the shed rows, and as I'm talking and I'm praying with the workers, I am having conversations in Spanish. Also every day at break, we serve coffee and pastries in the chapel lunch room, where again, we have the opportunity to connect with people and share the good news of the gospel. And there are many other areas of ministry in that list as well. I cannot mention them all You can read it for yourself in that brochure. But just like the duties of a pastor, a chaplain has funerals, weddings, hospital visitations, and everything in between. From mid-December through February, a period of 2.5 months, we've had 5 deaths out there at the track. On Tuesday of this week, I'll be having 2 memorial services with a luncheon in between. And the question is, why does this fall my lot? Well, because for the most part, these are very unchurched people. And I'm the only pastor that they have. And I consider it a real opportunity and a real privilege to minister to them at this time. And then another question that you might have is, how are we funded? Although I don't have the exact numbers, we are working with a yearly budget of around $100,000. Let me just say this, I'm a full-time employee, there's 2 part-time employees, and about half of that budget comes from the HBPA, which is the Horsemen's Benefit Protection Association. They recognize the value that we bring to the people of the track, and they express that gratitude and that value through their dollars. And that leaves the other half that I have to raise, that comes through private donations. I have to find ways of raising that money. Right now, we are doing 2 fundraisers each year. And then there's another question that is not often asked, though I know it is there in the minds, and if not also in the reactions of many good people. And that is this: how do you work with or associate with an industry that is dependent upon and funded entirely by gambling? Let's just address the elephant in the room, should we? That's a good question. It's a question that I had to grapple with when I took the job. I would answer it first with a question. How could I not? How could I not? I am being offered 500 people as a mission field to work with them on the backside, people who work with the horses, who recognize me as a chaplain, recognize me as their chaplain. They respect and they appreciate the work that I do. These people are being placed under my care for the express purpose to witness to them, to preach to them, to minister to them. How could I not accept that opportunity? The question again is, how do you work with or associate with the industry that is dependent and funded entirely by gambling? Well, I would answer that secondly by saying that in the same way that Jesus ministered to the tax collector, Zacchaeus, went home with him to eat, and he was a converted man. In the same way that he ministered to the woman caught in adultery, and he said, "Neither do I condemn thee, go and sin no more." Well, I consider it a privilege to work there. It has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, and I invite any of you, if you want to know more about it, I'd be happy to take you and give you a tour and see what we're doing out there in Grantville at the racetrack. Thank you, Pastor Goen. The Lord bless you.